Great. If I heard. Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. The time is 2 p.m. And I'm going to call to order the meeting of the City of Ocean Shores Planning Commission. We'll start with the roll call. Commissioner Brickner. Brickner. I'm so sorry.
I got the gist.
What am I doing today? Commissioner Ward.
I'm excited to be here.
Commissioner Bachman.
Here.
Commissioner Dorman.
Yeah.
Commissioner Wells.
Here.
Commissioner Brunstad.
Here.
All commissioners are present. Do we have a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
I would motion to approve the meeting agenda, but I would like to amend it and have the past discussion before the pyramid zoning discussion, affordable housing discussion in front of pyramid zoning. And the reason for that is affordable housing is a cornerstone of why pyramid zoning needs to be changed.
Any
So there's
objections?
discussion.
Any objections to the change of order?
No.
None noted. Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All righty. We have approval of the meeting agenda. Who's taking notes?
I don't know. We didn't say last time.
I think I said last week.
Oh,
I think we're supposed to be.
I better get an outline here to do it on,
Yeah. I think it was supposed to be.
huh? It is Commissioner Ward.
Commissioner Ward. That's what it said on the hand.
Okay, I'm all set.
So that one was moved by you,
And
seconded by almost everybody.
Yeah, just one.
Do we have a motion to approve the minutes from the Ocean Shore Planning Commission meeting of July 22nd, 2022?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
So
So that was moved by Bachman, seconded by Wills.
I would like to bring to our attention that the minutes from the little short session that I took the minutes on. I can think not what it is, I was going to those minutes, but we have never reviewed and approved those minutes.
January 8th.
Yeah, the special meeting we had
The
for
special meeting.
voting. All right, I'll find them. And I'll make sure they get it on the next one. We'll add, thank you. There's a special meeting we had on Friday or something,
Yeah.
or Monday, I forget which was Friday. Okay. Time for public comments. Anybody?
Well, I'm waiting for the handbook for the planning commission, and I won't have any comments until it's available. It will be available on the website soon.
It was in
The agenda package
the agenda package for today's
online.
meeting. So if you want to review it, you certainly can. It was in the agenda package because I had to stop my print. Any other public?
I don't have anything at this time, thank you. Don Williams, do you have a public comment?
Yes, I do. Am I okay there? Okay, I just want to comment on this agenda item called pyramid zoning and business districts. And although my comment isn't exactly that, I think one of the things, there is a problem with pyramid zoning. And one of the problems is how it affects residential areas that have grown up in a multiple R level district zone, have grown up as essentially single family neighborhoods, and suddenly an R5 wants to come in. An example is the hearing examiner a year ago, last July 28th on Gunderson Street. There's a little, if you look at the zoning map, there's a little tiny little area of R5. And it's essentially all residential, and the applicant ended up getting approval for I think a 3-story triplex or duplex or a condo or something. And I would hope that in talking about pyramid zoning, that somewhere along the way, the city looks at existing zoning and of existing areas that are R2 and above, and see that maybe some of those ought to be changed to R1 or some lower level, to preserve the nature of the neighborhood, which is what happened to the area on Gunderson Street. It was just a tiny little sliver of R5, and it was all R1, all residential, single family. And I think that problem duplicates itself all over town. And it really has to do with pyramid zoning. I know your discussion today is on business areas, and that's important too. But I think somewhere along the way, the city ought to look at these little all the zoning and see if some of it should be revised to a lower density to comply with what the neighborhood is growing up as. And that's my comment. Thank you.
Are we allowed to comment or not?
Not directly on this, you can bring it up during
Okay,
our discussion of
okay,
pyramid
so
zoning,
I'd like to address Don.
but not as a direct return. You can
I
address it.
get it.
Good. Okay.
Sidebar, is there a map that was passed out? I don't know.
Oh, sure.
Two maps.
Thank you. Okay.
That's a multi-family zone.
Hurry up.
He needs, this one.
The general land use 2019.
Owner, you don't have either.
Yeah, we'll take both down here.
Dan, I think we looked at this particular area in past meetings. Thank you.
All right. So we're gonna move on to Planning Commission Handbook. I will let Dan take it.
Dan,
Not passing out, Sean. Okay.
Okay, I'm not sure the best way to handle this, but everybody had a chance, has had quite a chance to look at this. I know I have some concerns. Rather than go through the handbook, I'll ask if you guys want to talk about specific areas, or if you want to go through it, the sections that we changed.
I have annotated a version, mostly just typos and that sort of stuff. So do we want to kind of like go page by page and things come up? If there's no comment, go to the next page.
If you have made hand annotations on a paper copy, if you give me your paper copy of those annotations, then I will update the electronic copy.
Mostly just questions.
Okay,
So there's nothing really that would be a lot of just questions. So maybe Dan, in gender, just list the page, I guess, start at page 8 and then see if anybody has a comment.
We'll do it that way. Anybody got any comments on page 8?
I'm trying, I went through this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm trying to remember.
Absolutely. Well, page 8. I don't think we've done anything before that.
and I assume we're page 8 of the agenda package.
8 of 150.
It's a bylaw.
So bylaws, I'm sorry, page 8, I'm not using the agenda packet. I'm using the actual copy. So it would, in the dark, it says page 8 of 150. So that would be,
Section 2 bylaws.
so that would be 12 of the agenda packet. Make it even more confusing. That's all right.
I've got the actual document, so,
Yeah, I'm looking at the actual document.
so it's my page 8, but it's section 2 bylaws, the first page.
I did have a question
Yeah.
here. On the term limit, was that something new we added or has that always been there?
It's always been there.
Okay, that was my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything on the next page, by page 9?
Which is page 13 of the agenda package.
Okay. Go to the next page, on page 10. All I can do is take out the secretary.
On this one, I've got one typo under section E. One chair, you're missing a bullet on the last bullet item. Act as liaison. That's it. Did you get that one, Richard?
Yeah, well, that, this is.
Yep.
this is,
Typo.
Okay, anything on page 11?
No, 12. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's 150 pages. It might be easier if Gary has specific, if he just
No, we're going, because after page 30, it's all
You're right.
boilerplate.
You're right.
Yeah, so we don't need to, so,
Okay, page 12,
Eleanor had something.
that's where we added.
So we gotta start figuring, we gotta do a little work here.
Okay, I know that the mayor would like to have people, even if they have a direct interest, take place and vote. Even though people have a direct interest, for example, the discussion we had that Pat immediately said he had an interest in, I think his input was needed as something that the commission should at least talk about and think about, because it gives us food for thought. So I was 100% behind someone in that situation being able to participate in the discussion. But I think allowing that person to vote can appear to be inappropriate to people who don't agree. I just don't think it looks good.
So, go ahead, Richard.
So, when Eleanor first brought this up, I can see the concern and I can see the room for confusion. And my suggestion for the fix, and I printed this out, so I'll give everybody a copy of it. This is the MRSC lawyer response. And my suggestion is that at the end of that red type, that we add a note C appendix, whatever it is, X, Y, Z, whatever the appendix number is, and put this or something very close to this, because this is a direct quote from the MRSC's response email that Sarah instigated. And then put this, and I think that appendix would also need to say, based on what Jill DeHorkin said, that it's clear that unless there is a semi-judicial action, or if a commissioner stands monetary gain, then there is no conflict. And just putting this document in there, then 10 years from now, people say, how come they made that decision? Because the MRSC lawyer said it was a legitimate decision.
But I think this leaves it open, and I would rather make it a yay or a nay. I think it leaves too much open to whoever happens to be on a particular side, or is the committee loaded in one particular area. And I would like to see that they can discuss it, disclose their interest, but I believe it's inappropriate to vote on something that obviously could be in my best interest. I just think it puts the appearance in jeopardy of everything the planning commission does.
So what I'm trying to go to, because, and I'll take comments on this, is it says, if deemed appropriate by the commissioner or required by law, refrain from participating in or voting on the matter at hand. So what we're saying is, if you have a direct or indirect interest or who would benefit from any matter, you're not allowed to participate or vote.
But it says if deemed appropriate by that commission. I mean, let's just give an example here. Let's say we had 3 builders or 3 people that had some investing in building, had their best interest in heart for something to pass one way. And by all appearances that we can see, it looks like it's okay for them to vote. I just don't think that could look appropriate to the community, or that it's in the best interest of the commission to have their word or what they're doing in doubt. And I'm wholly for the discussion and anything they can bring up, pro or con. But I am totally against allowing people to vote on something as important as this if they have an interest in the outcome.
So I'd make a couple of comments, but I'll preface by saying, I respect what you're saying, Eleanor, but I respectfully disagree with you. And the reason I disagree with you is because whether it's in the first 30 pages of the handbook or if it's in the WAC, it's kind of jumbled in my memory, but it says specifically, as lawyer Jill says, that unless there is a quasi legal matter under discussion, or if there is a specific monetary gain, and the first step in the code is that the affected commissioner says, I have a conflict of interest. And then the commissioner then says, and because I have a conflict of interest, I recuse myself. And if the rest of the council disagrees with that commissioner's position and say, no, we think that your conflict of interest carries Eleanor's weight, which is legitimate, then the council would say, no, we demand that you recuse yourself from the vote. That's already in the code.
Well, I don't see that.
I think print that part of the code out.
So what this says is I think the issue here you have, speaking for, and I understand the issue is, it's up to the commissioner with a conflict to decide whether or not he can participate.
That's the first step, and it's further expounded in the code that if the next presiding decision is made by the council member's boss, which would be the mayor, and then by the legal entity, which would be us, the planning commission. So I think that Eleanor's concern is legitimate, and I think there may be room to clarify the language, and that's my intent of adding this as an appendix. But I think that the intent is pretty clear. But like Eleanor, I'm for whatever the consensus is. But I think that we're making it more complicated than it actually needs to be.
I think an easy fix would be, and I agree with you. An easy fix would be if deemed appropriate by the planning commission.
Yeah.
Instead of the commissioner. That way it puts it on all of
On
us.
all of this.
I think that's exactly what I was gonna suggest.
So Richard, before you go, I think that sort of gets that basically, so I'm trying to walk through this before you get into this, Richard. So I stand up and say, I have a conflict of interest. I think I have a conflict of interest. Let me explain what this is. That would immediately require a planning commission vote on continued participation and or voting. So the planning commission may decide, yes, we would like you to participate in discussion, but we would like you to abstain from voting. Is that sort of what you were looking for?
No, I think that's what it says.
No, this says the commissioner. What we're saying is replace that with the planning commission.
Well, it
In
still
type
has the part that I don't like.
So change that to and commissioner to commission, and it's fixed.
I don't like the idea of someone who admits they have a conflict taking part in a vote. I guess everything else I'm fine with. I think the discussion is great. I want to hear everybody's opinion. But nothing's going to convince me that voting when you have a conflict of interest is okay. In my book, it's just not. But whatever the commission
So
decides.
I'm gonna give you an example of something that my own business interest could come into conflict on. Which I don't think should preclude me from voting on something. Let's say, for instance, we as a planning commission want to require food truck vendors to purchase an insurance policy. I could be said to be benefiting from that because I'm one of 2 insurance agents in this entire town. Okay. But that's, I don't see how that is going to preclude me from making a good decision or preclude this body from making a decision on that subject.
I think there's a huge difference between a insurance policy and a builder. I hope you don't mind my using you because you have been the most upfront and fortunately have brought this to fruition. But there's a big difference between the wonderful complex that you have built, but it's huge. So if you were able to get a positive result on something that would help you build a similar huge project, the gain for you is much greater than the gain on an insurance policy.
Can I just interject one thing real quick? So, or Sarah, go ahead.
I just want to say that this is like a lot of time and effort on you guys voting for monetary things. At the end of the day, when I had to deal with this with Pat and I had to deal with this with Thorne, none of you make a decision for laws in this city. That is a recommendation, your recommendation advisory committee to the council.
Well,
So that's-
everyone is like that though. So I still
100%.
have to work with what I feel and my conscience is the best way to go. And anything we do, the council can overrule us.
Right,
But they
so
want
if
us
Pat
to make-
says, if Pat has a monetary interest in something you're discussing, just like Brian just said, it doesn't matter if he votes or doesn't vote, or is a part of the conversation or isn't a part of the conversation, the council has the ultimate change of rules.
But that's, okay, I'm not buying it, but.
So let me just throw one more thing. So, once the commissioner discloses that he has a conflict.
There's a potential conflict of interest.
Then it's up to the commission, all of us, to collectively agree, yeah, there's a conflict. And you can participate, and you can vote, or no, you can't vote, or no, you can't do any of it. But by changing it to the commission, it takes care of it. It takes it out of the commissioner's hand, it puts it in the group's hand, which I think is what we need.
And I agree exactly with what Pat said, and I would go on to say, again, Eleanor, I understand, and in some ways I agree with, but I disagree with your position on the voting. And I would go on to say that the beauty of a body like this planning commission is that a majority consensus rules the day. And so if we need to take a vote on following Eleanor's path or following Pat's path, then I would move that we make a vote on that, but I
We
don't
don't need
think
to vote,
we do that.
we just need a thumbs up.
Yeah, and the issue is, so is your issue that the commission decides if a commissioner can vote?
No, my view is that I like these people, even though if they have a conflict of interest, to give me why they are pro or con, because I think they probably come with a wealth of information that we should consider. But I don't want to have them vote if we knowingly know they have a conflict of interest. Now, you all may disagree with me, and that's okay. I'm willing to vote my way on this. I just want you to know that I think to make sure that the community feels comfortable, that they don't feel like we're being influenced by somebody that has a conflict of interest. And I understand the city council has the last decision, but I still have to vote what I think is appropriate, and I don't believe it's appropriate for somebody with a conflict to vote.
Well, and I think, Eleanor, what we're saying is, if there is a conflict, we can basically, as the commission say, we agree you have a conflict, and we would like you to not participate or vote. Or we agree you have a conflict, and we would like you to participate but not vote. I think that's what we're trying to do here.
I understand exactly what this is saying and what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that I would like the voting to be stricken out. If you all want it in, let's just
But
vote.
what I'm
on
saying is how would you say, if we agree there is a conflict of interest, then we would not let them vote? That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, that's fine, that's.
That's how I read this, is if the planning commission agrees there is a conflict of interest, the planning commission would vote to not let that commissioner.
They
Oh.
could,
Oh, okay, we're just going around in circles.
yeah,
Let's do a thumbs up for Clinton.
So,
Well, I was just gonna make a comment, when Sarah said that it's up to the city council, and I'm not sure that this handbook actually goes to the city council. I don't know the procedure, but I think it has to go to the mayor, and the mayor probably sends it to the lawyer. So almost everything that we do does go to city council, but I'm not sure the handbook actually.
Well, to him, it doesn't matter. I think what Sarah's saying, we don't make decisions.
Right.
anyways.
Yeah,
We just
exactly.
pass stuff on.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay,
so what you would, the thumbs up, so we're clear, is to change the words that commissioner to the commission.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thumbs up.
hold on a second, are you just voting on that particular sentence?
That's it, yeah.
Okay, then I can move after that for something else, okay?
Go ahead.
So, but before you do that, I'm on my computer and I'll, actually, do you know where she's talking about, so that you can make the change?
Yeah.
Oh,
right
okay,
there.
okay, good, then I need to draw.
Page 12.
Okay. Thumbs up on the change.
If we're just talking that change,
Absolutely.
Okay. let's move on.
okay. May I?
Please. Oh,
I would like it to say, if deemed appropriate by the commission, then the person with a conflict would be allowed to participate in the meeting, but not vote on the matter at hand, is what I want stricken.
to make it definitive that there is, if there is a definitive statement that there is a conflict, they can't vote.
That they certainly can participate if the planning commission deems it appropriate, but they cannot vote.
Eleanor, I'm sorry, I disagree with you because
That's okay.
That's too firm. Like in Brian's case, what he said, yes, he has a conflict, but it's a minor one. So you're saying, no, they can't vote just because he has a minor one, right?
I don't really see that particular incident, but let's just vote. That's okay.
And we did the thumbs up as stated. Thorne,
We only have a vaguely defined conflict of interest that I've heard, and I don't know what the heck a conflict of interest really means. The only specific definition that makes any sense here is our quasi judicial opportunity, which are rare, which is variances, conditional use permits, God knows what else. But most of the time, we have general discussions about what's best for the city, in our opinion, which may or may not satisfy some particular interest we have for whatever reason, monetary, emotional, I don't know. But to say conflict of interest means nothing to me. I don't know what the hell it means.
Well, if you read the handbook and other sections, the people talk about it.
incredible level of detail.
Yeah, so that it's in here.
Yeah.
But,
Okay,
so ready to move on?
yes, go ahead, sir.
Okay, let's get to policies and procedures. My page,
Your 15, today's packet 19.
any comments there?
No, you just changed, got rid of the secretary.
Okay, the next page, my 16.
I have one, Roman numeral 3, section C, you left a secretary on the second line. Oh, that's the only one I found. You did a great job on getting them all but one. You see it?
Okay, and, we'll change that, shall be reported to the mayor by the chair.
I wish we had a secretary. I had to do less work.
Okay.
We're almost
I
8
know,
years.
I know.
Page 17. Okay,
I have something on what page are you on?
I'm at 17.
All right, and so this would be, I want to keep everybody straight, 21 of the packet. So the very bottom of the page, under absences, it says, in the event any commissioner is absent from 3 consecutive meetings without cause, a recommendation adopted by a simple majority vote of the planning commission shall be made to the mayor. It's a recommendation for what? Because we go right into removal. Should we say a recommendation for removal?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? I got a little confused reading that a couple of times.
Yeah, I agree.
So a recommendation for removal, maybe add the words for removal.
Okay.
In your time here, has that been a problem? The commissioner's not showing up?
No, I think as I stated last time, I didn't show up
Yeah.
for 4 or 5 meetings, but I had an, you know, an
Okay.
illness excuse. Other than that, I don't think we've ever had anybody miss a
Well, Craig-
meeting
Craig
without
missed
an
a lot, but
excuse.
He had the same situation.
Yeah, I mean, I understand excused absence are okay.
And I was gonna say, in my memory, which is, I've been on the planning commission for probably close to 5 years. When Brian missed a meeting a couple of meetings ago, that's the only unexcused absence I can think of in 5 years. You know,
Shame,
I was
shame.
on my deathbed. I mean, I had
we're all
COVID.
busy people and, forget, oh, it's 2 o'clock. Not a big deal.
Gosh, okay, thanks, that's all I have on
Yeah,
that one.
somebody pull me out from under that bus.
No,
Yeah.
no, it's not a big deal.
Okay, page 18.
I don't know. Page 18 is just
Yeah.
this public meeting stuff.
19.
My question, sir, do we use a sign up sheet? Because our
No.
handbook calls for
We
a sign up
used
sheet.
to,
No,
yeah, we used to have a sign up sheet.
Should we
There's-
start using it again?
no, in my opinion, because there's nothing that requires under OPMA for people to sign in just because they've attended a meeting.
But we had a sign up sheet in order to make public comment.
Oh, you can enact that if you'd like. That's the same thing the council did, but I stopped doing it when I took this portion over from Alicia because you can't require or have it even out. I mean, there's no sense in it for somebody to join an open meeting.
Okay.
So we
Okay,
can do public comment if you want.
no, and I'm okay with this, Dan, because I just reread it for the 3rd time. It says should be signed in. So we're covered. We don't have a sign-in sheet, it only says should.
Yeah, I don't know why you'd ever have one.
So maybe, we don't know. We can leave it in.
My opinion is, in city council, where there's 30, 50, 100 people
Yeah.
in the city council, sign-up sheet makes absolute sense. Here, we normally have 1, 2, 3 people. If we had a thing like the chicken discussion, where there's 60 people in the room, then maybe a sign-up sheet, but we can do that in that moment. So I don't think we need to make any changes.
Okay, we'll leave it how it is. That's
Okay.
fine.
Anything else on that page?
We're missing the secretary.
Okay. The page 20. Nothing.
And we've agreed, so everybody knows, we've agreed that when there is not a unanimous vote, we'll do a roll call. That's my fault for not doing that in the past. Got it? So make Sarah do the roll call. She's so good at it.
So good.
Okay, 21. Okay, that's basically all the changes.
So before we move on, I would like to point out that in this PDF version of this handbook, that the footers all got changed throughout the document to say whatever they say down here. Planning Commission handbook presented by Planning Commissioner Dan Bricker. And when this whole handbook change came about, Dan referenced a specific paragraph, and I was asking what that paragraph was. It was hard to figure out exactly what page we were referencing. And so in the version of the document that you got through email prior to the last planning commission, if you want to refer back to that, you'll notice that every section as outlined in the table of comments, the footer says section 1 bylaws, section 6, whatever it is. And it also says that this has been reviewed and updated in the, whatever it is, July, August timeframe. And so I just want to bring to your attention that with the changes you're recommending, I want to make sure that we all recognize that the original footers go go back into the document. And when Dan updates, he will email his version of the Word document to me and I'll make any adjustments that need to be made based on what he says. And if there's no changes, then that version gets sent to you and to Sarah. And that's the final version, but it will include the original footer notes that include the section, name, and whatever notes are in there. And if you want to see those notes, look at last meetings that Gary emailed to us. Does that make sense?
Can I ask one thing before we move on, or what page do you want?
Page 20, I'll have to change the conflict of interest statement there to match the other one.
Yes. Go to that. Page 20, let me find it.
At the top.
It's on page 21. No. No, I got it right here. Page 20, I've got it on page 21.
Not me.
It's on 20.
Okay, here it is. You'll have to change that.
Yeah.
I agree.
So I'm asking, you're gonna put in what we have in red on the other section.
Yes.
Plug it in here.
So can I ask on the standing rules, top of page 21, which solves, which takes care of what Eleanor wanted? Top of page 21.
In the event that any, is that where you're at?
Yeah, we definitely need to remove that.
That's basically what you were asking for, right?
No,
You said,
I don't want them necessarily to be removed from the room. I
no, we
just
took
want-
that out, but you want to leave the statement that says disqualified from voting.
Yes, I want to leave that.
I'm okay with that. I think we've covered this conflict of interest so many places that this is the last one that makes it very clear that if we say, yes, you have a conflict of interest, there's no way we should ever let them vote.
But what this says is in the event that any commissioner present shall have a conflict of personal interest. And I think it needs to be modified to say if the planning commission votes that any individual has a conflict of interest. Otherwise, we're right back and say that if I perceive that Brian has a conflict of interest, regardless of what we did earlier, he can't vote because that says so right here in paragraph E.
So, yeah, and we're now talking under standing rules. What you're saying, in the event that the commission determines that any commissioner present
I like that. In the event that the commission
determines, because we've covered that earlier on how we voted and remember that. But I like this strong statement that you can't vote. Okay,
If the commission.
determines.
Yeah.
You see what we're saying there?
Yeah.
That
Yeah,
solves.
all right.
I agree with a very firm
Solved.
statement, no voting. Okay,
It's okay if it's gonna get for me, how's that?
Yeah,
I'll concede.
I didn't get the
Okay, I did not make any changes in the rest of that.
I had
Good job, Dan.
I had a question on one of these, Dan. I just have to bring it up to the group because we did open this for update. And I just want to have a brief, maybe 2-minute discussion about page 28, duties of the planning commission. There's 4 things.
Okay, where are we?
Page 28, it's right, yeah, those 4 things. I mean, it seems to be almost overly focused on the comprehensive plan, maybe not. Is this really all we want to say? I'm gonna ask you, Dan, because I guess other duties as assigned covers most of what we do.
Which page now?
That's page 28, the 4 duties of a planning commissioner.
And what's your point here?
I'm just wondering, is this comprehensive enough? Is this vague enough? Is this adequate? I just wondering, because it appears to me this was written at the start of preparing to work on the comprehensive plan. Just want a general, if anybody has a discussion about those 4 duties or not.
My memory is, and I'd have to go back to the original document, which I can access from here, but my memory is this page was developed like in 1980 by
Okay.
somebody who submitted to the MRSC.
Okay.
And MRSC no longer has that document available, so I took that page as it was.
Okay.
And said it's, because in my mind, this pretty much covers our duties and their ancillary.
I just want to call everybody's attention to it, because those are really our 4 duties, and if we agree that's what we do. I'm okay with it.
I think that's pretty accurate.
Okay, that's all I had.
So number 4 catches it all.
Exactly, number 4 seems to be a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
What the mayor asked us to do. And that's fine. if we need to.
Any other comments on the handbook?
No, I'm very happy with it.
Okay, do we want to take a vote passing the planning commission handbook with changes that were recommended?
Somebody want to make a motion?
I move that we pass the handbook with changes as made, and Dan will bring it back at the next meeting.
It'll be final for my signature.
It'll be final with those changes. And Dan's made all of those notes.
I'll second that.
All in favor? Aye. Well, I'll help you out with that one. That was moved by
Ryan,
Ryan and seconded by
I think I said.
Willis, and it was unanimous.
Oh,
And that
I
was
moved-
to
I moved
approve,
Ryan second.
to approve the changes and finalize the handbook.
2 seconds.
I moved Ryan second.
I'll. Good work, Dan.
Excellent work, Dan. Thank you so much for that. That was a much needed.
Great job.
Very happy with that. So we're gonna go into residential building code. Pat is ready.
I'm just about.
I know you are.
Quick question before we do, and this concerns conflict of interest, and the discussion took place. Every one of us have homes in R1. We're gonna be talking about R1. And what else? And B1 and so on. Do we have conflicts if we own property in these divisions we're talking about?
There we go. So the floor is yours, Pat.
So the first piece of this, the R3 and greater twin home example and flow chart, we didn't get a chance to do that, so that one's gotta get pushed.
Well, that's fine.
Or did you?
We did get a good start on it. I just didn't get the draft to you in time for the meeting.
Okay.
But we've got a good start on what that's looking like.
Can I ask you, are you happy with the flow chart? Do you think it's gonna be useful?
Well, we're gonna end up with probably something like a circular chart because of the amount of text that's gonna be involved in the descriptions.
Okay.
That's one of the things that Amy and I are trying to flesh out right now is what we need to make it look like, so that it's easily readable.
But you think it'll be a good tool for people that are interested? in
I do,
this?
yeah.
Okay. That's it. I wanna make sure we're not wasting time, whatever you do.
Yeah, no, that's,
Okay.
So the next one is R1 minimum square footage rules, possible change code to 650 square feet space in lieu of on floor. So I printed out for you all to read the 17.50.210.
Pass that out. I didn't-
I did. If you don't have it, I've got more. Architectural features.
Is that the current rule?
Yeah, current rule. Here, there's more.
That's good. Okay, I'm very familiar with this now. I
Yeah.
didn't know the number, but I know what you're talking about. Yep.
So I'm just gonna read through it and then
I know what it is.
So it says no dwelling structure shall occupy more than 40% of total lot area. Okay. All lots shall be 7,200 square feet minimum, except lots is platted on date of adoption of the ordinance codified in this chapter. Provision of off-street parking. not really talking about that. No dwelling shall be permitted on any lot wherein the floor area of the main structure exclusive of open porches, and garages shall be less than the minimum floor space shown in the following schedule. So basically, it lists the divisions, the minimum square footage. But if you go and you build it as a two-story, then something kicks in, which is E. It says more than one story dwelling shall have a minimum main floor area of the main structure exclusive of open porches and garages shown on the above schedule. In addition, shall have at least a combined total square footage area exclusive of open porches and garages of 1,000 square feet. So what happens is you go to two stories, then that building has got to have 1,000 square feet of livable space with 650 on the main floor, whether it's the first floor or the second floor. That makes sense? Okay. So really, when you say you can take an interior lot and build a 650 square foot home, you really can't, we can if it's just one level, but if it goes to two level, then it's got to be 1,000 square feet. I'm not sure if anybody knows that.
What I'm interpreting, what I think I heard you just say is I would have, the ground floor would have to be a minimum of 650 square feet. And the top floor would have to be a minimum of 650, of
No.
1,000 minus 650.
No.
No, total, so either or. No, so 650 on the bottom, that means you gotta put at least 350 on the top
Right.
to get to 1,000.
If you're gonna go two-story, right? So, but that 650 could be on the top, or it could be 1,000 on the top and all garages on the bottom still qualifies.
Are we talking about those areas which now say 1,000 square feet minimum on the main floor?
That's the areas that's 650 square feet. So really, if you're gonna do a two-story, it's 1,000 square feet, because that's what E does. Unless I'm reading it wrong.
I think that's.
No, I believe that's how I've interpreted it since we came, since I started with planning, is that if you do go to two stories, you're gonna be limited, or you're gonna be, I guess, limited to a minimum of 1,000 square feet of living space.
But you couldn't go 500 and 500.
Correct.
It has to be
650 on the main floor.
650 somewhere
Yeah,
on the main floor, on one floor.
That's the interpretation that we've been using. Yes. Go ahead, Eleanor.
I don't know if you can answer this question, but there is a house, well, until she stops talking, I can't talk now.
Wait a minute.
They're just clarifying amongst themselves.
Oh, sure, we have a question.
Go ahead. Sorry.
There's a house that was built a few years ago up near the airport, opposite the park. And it appears, and I don't know this for sure, but it appears that it's all garages on the main level and the living space is above that. So it just now occurred to me, would the main level then be considered the first floor?
That would be the second floor.
It would be this.
So there wouldn't be any living on the first floor. That means how did that get built?
And that's okay, as long as the next floor has 1,000 square feet.
Which I think it does.
It probably does.
What that says. Main floor area,
Okay, that was my question. Main
exclusive
floor
of open
area.
porches and garages.
So the main floor area in that case would be above.
The second level. Yes.
Eleanor, I had exactly the same
Yeah.
question and it's resolved.
So if you decide you want to build above garages, you're stuck with 1,000 square foot second story,
Minimum.
minimum. Okay,
Minimum?
minimum.
So the question I want to pose to the group is, does this make sense? Does this code make sense? Or should it just be 650 square feet, 800 square feet, and 1,000 square feet?
You're saying should we leave paragraph E in or take it out?
Take it out.
And I'd like, I'm interested with what everybody else has to say.
Oh,
Another question that you may or may not be able to answer. There's a house on Ocean Shores Boulevard, a couple of lots down from the Ken Peterson Park. that house couldn't possibly have anywhere near this square footage. It's got, I think, 3 floors of
Yeah.
narrow
It's old house seller.
blue, yeah.
It's been there a long time. I know exactly what you're talking
Probably
about.
grandfather did.
I know what you're talking about. It's about a 300 square
Yeah.
foot, 5 floor, 3 stories
So you
tall.
think that was before the?
Well before it. Well, no, this has always been here. They just managed to get it in somehow with a variance.
I think that looks atrocious to have a skinny little house and get your square footage going up 3 stories. How it would look in 2 stories?
I don't disagree, but part of our mandate is affordable housing.
Yeah.
So if we were to take off E, it would help accomplish affordable housing. Because then people could put their garage in and do a 650 square foot house above.
So you're recommending that we delete paragraph E?
I am just throwing it out there for discussion, is as an avenue to get us to more affordable housing. And then it also ties into page 2, which is 17.50.150. Correction of more than one principal structure on a lot. Now, this isn't R1, this is R2 and above.
Okay, yeah, 2 different issues. Let's do your first one first.
Well, but it has an overlapping effect, and that's why I
Why
wanted
does it
to
overlap?
bring this. Because right now you cannot build, well, what this would do is it allow for somebody with, say, an R5 lot to build 5, building inspector calls them pencil houses because they're tall and skinny. You could build 5 of those things that are detached, which in some ways are a lot more attractive than a 5-plex, 4-plex.
Would each one have to meet the minimum square footage of the?
If we were to strike E, then it would be 650 square feet or depending.
For the base?
Yeah.
For the floor?
For the whole thing, the living space.
So then we would wind up with what Eleanor was just talking about. You could have 3 stories of, what's the math, 225 square feet each,
You could, yep,
and
likely you wouldn't. You'd probably have 2 stories of like
right,
375 square feet,
the possibility is there.
right? Yeah, absolutely.
And my first thought is that anything that allows more affordable housing to be built, and that actually means having smaller dwelling structure, not having dwelling units, smaller dwelling units. Anything that allows smaller dwelling units creates a more affordable house, and I'm in favor of that because affordable housing is a big issue nationwide, and it's become a big issue here. School teachers can't teach here because they can't live here. And living in a 500 or a 400 or a 600 square foot house, that's an individual choice. And so I'm in favor of anything that allows.
I would rather at least discuss lowering the size rather than 650, making it 450, 500, then end up with, I don't know what the square footage is on those 3 structures by the Twin Star Credit Union. But I would hate to see the town develop into structures like that. It looks awful in my view. Do you know how many square feet they have on each floor?
They meet the minimum square footages of this table under the old code. And if I could comment for just a minute or ask the question, if this got printed out from the website, because this code has not been updated with the current ordinance that we just passed, updating the architectural features. So the language that talks about this table not applying to multi-structures is code, but it has not been reflected on the website yet that publishes this. They're a few months behind based on my conversation with Sarah. And so we're missing some language from this code right now. I suspect. I'm not sure how it applies to the discussion that we're having today because it more applied to the multi-structures.
The multifamily.
The
structure.
multifamily, yes.
I don't think it applied to.
I don't think we did anything to single family, the
I
R1.
think to And
But I
then-
just want the group to be aware that there is some other language there that, when I go back, after the discussion, I will, kind of look to make sure that we don't step on code that we just had rewritten.
No, I don't think we would, but we would have to see.
Well, plus that architectural design standard that we came up with is going to dictate in, not the square footage, but it's gonna dictate what the structure looks like to some degree, because there are offsets, there are things that we mandated. If you guys remember that, in our architectural design, right?
I totally agree with what you're saying. I feel strongly that we should allow builders to build a 650 square foot livable unit, regardless of the levels. And I think it helps in a couple things. It helps with affordable housing. It helps with everybody hates how somebody comes in and just clears the lot. You can leave more trees if you don't have a bigger footprint of the house. I think that all of our codes, I agree with Pat, like all of our codes about the architectural standards, keeps us from, having these structures that look wacky just because they can. I think that it's gonna foster more building in this area, and I think that's what we need.
Go on.
This is the only city in the state that has these kinds of rules. I've never understood it. This is a fiendishly complicated conversation. Where you build your house depends on how big you can make it or how big you have to make it. But if we just simply follow the uniform building code, they would dictate the size of the rooms for bathrooms, bedrooms, always, God knows what else. Let it go at that. Contacting municipal research, they could not find another town in this state that has these kinds of rules.
Oh, I've seen them. I can't recall which ones offhand, but
They
I
say
think
no.
that's a stretch.
They say no. Covenants may say it, but building codes don't. And I'm thinking, what are we making this job so hard for? This is crazy.
Go ahead, Ellen.
I don't have any problem with, in order to obtain affordable housing, of dropping down the minimum square foot on the base level. I mean, if somebody wants to live in 500 square feet, more power to them. I don't necessarily want them to have to spread out and go up 3 stories in order to build something they can afford.
Yeah, this doesn't, so by dropping the minimum square footage of 500 and keeping E, it's still gonna push them to 1,000 square feet when they go 2-story. So
Just talking about getting rid of E.
So I can tell you this from my experience as a builder, if you take a 650 square feet and do a 3-story out of it, it's gonna be an engineering nightmare. Because of wind and shear and all that stuff, you just don't have the mats to be able to pull it together. There's not gonna be a bunch of 3-story, 650 square foot houses popping up everywhere. There will be some 2-story, 650 square foot houses popping up, but likely it'll be more like 800 square feet. But you can't do it under these rules that exist today.
Or it would be a, 650 square foot livable space above a 650 square foot garage.
Correct.
That would be, in my opinion, that's the most affordable, sensible.
Absolutely.
If I was gonna build under this deleting E,
Right.
I would build, I know how I would do it, I would build 650 on the main and 1 bedroom downstairs, and then, the rest of it's garage, and now you've met all the requirements.
All I'm saying is that E makes it, to Thorne's point, I don't know why we say that in Division 1 you can do 650, but in Division 17A, it's got to be 1,000 square feet on the waterfront lot. I kind of understand the logic of where they came from in the beginning. There was 12,500 lots in Ocean Shores, and none of them were developed. So let's set some standards so we don't get a bunch of little houses. But the world's changed, and we need affordable housing. And this is one way to get us closer to that.
I'm with you on affordable housing, and I just, if you can show me that we're not gonna end up with structures like that one down near the park. Or heaven forbid, just because the sheer height of them, those buildings behind Twin Star, I just can't envision an Ocean Shores with these tall skinny buildings on them.
Well, if we do nothing, they could build those buildings that they did at Twin Star on any lot here, because they conform. All I'm saying is, that guy did what he did just because he had an idea and that's what they do. But I'm just saying that if we were able to do this, it's gonna be affordable to build a 652 story square foot house.
So to throw my 2 cents in, what's happened is, to get an affordable house right now, you have to get into one of these twin homes or something, with these double twin homes on a lot, or the triple homes, let's go with those that are up on, here on, further down Point Brown. Those are now in the affordable realm of what they're going for. What you're trying to do is allow somebody to come up with a single family home at a close to that affordability scale, and allow them the flexibility to basically, by deleting, and all you're really talking about is deleting E, and I'd like to look at those other ones that require 1,000 square feet. I don't know if I understand that either.
Yeah,
You know, so-
and that's the value.
But deleting E at least allows us to have the options to have garages and then 650 above it on the main floor, which is a decent sized home.
It is.
And it's gonna be a lot cheaper than a garage and 1,000 square feet above it.
And it's 650 square feet at $300 a foot, it's $195,000
Exactly.
plus the lot. So, for 250, you've got a 650 square foot home. There's nothing like that out here right now, because you can't.
These standards came from the covenants back in 1961 through 67. The city, when they became a city in 71, simply adopted the covenants for the most part, because they didn't have much of a baseline otherwise. So they were, let's go with that. So that's, if you read the covenants, that's what they say. And that was in the era of ranch style homes. Everybody was kind of spread out in one story. That was the model back in 1967. And nobody had no objection to it. But like you say, now affordable housing is kind of important. When we talk about a tiny house, 2 stories, you've got to remember that probably a third of that floor space is taken up by stairways and hallways. So it's not practical to build a house that tiny and have 2 stories anyway. So our fear of having a pencil thin house, 3 stories is, unless you're having ladders to go upstairs, is not, which you can't do, is not really logical to have happen. But you look through most communities, like, Seattle has a small housing ordinance where they have cluster housing, detached single family houses on a lot, maybe 3 or 4 of them, something like that. And that's probably affordable housing. Given they have a chance, most people don't want to live in an apartment. They want to live in detached housing, however small it might be.
And it, going back to this chart, we got division 1 through 9, 650. Why don't we just make it all a minimum square footage size of 650 and call it a day?
You mean everywhere?
Yeah, minimum square 650. Because no one's gonna go buy an oceanfront lot for $300,000 and put up a 600 square foot house. Not gonna happen. Besides that, you wouldn't even be able to see the ocean because you got all that wax puddle out there growing up.
Yeah, so the one thing I will say is that all of this is gonna have to go to council for a change. There's gonna be a ton of public input.
Absolutely.
So what we're gonna have to do is come up with, as a group, what we want to send to council. And we've gone from eliminating the table to eliminating paragraph E, into eliminating paragraph E and making it 650 everywhere. Go ahead, something.
I just want to ask one more question, because I'm not against what you're saying. I just want to look and see what's going to happen. If we lower the square footage everywhere, are we going to run into, for example, just down the street from us, there's, I want to say a house, but there's actually 2 houses going up on the lot. And I guess one is for a relative, so that lets them squeak by. But we've essentially got 2 dwellings, 2 complete houses on one lot.
which it actually allows for that now in R2 and above.
Right, but if we allow people to go, I mean, the lot's big where we are, so it's not exactly cramped. But if you get onto some of the smaller lots, I mean, the lots on Alder Lake are like 1,300 square feet, but if you get down to the 9,000 square feet, they would still be able to put 2 small houses on there, but if you tried it,
No, you can't.
There's a ratio, excuse me. There's-
percentage of ground covered.
Well, and there's also a maximum size limit for this, the second structure that you're referring to is called an accessory dwell, or an ADU,
Additional dwelling unit.
an additional dwelling unit. Like you said, for occupancy by a relative, which Thorne in past meetings has proposed for affordable housing to eliminate that requirement. So they're not 2 full structures, but there's a limitation on the size. That ADU can only be a proportion of the parent or the mother structure size.
Up to 800 square feet.
Up to 800, is that the maximum size of an ADU?
Irrespective of the parent.
Okay,
And they're allowed by one too, but
yes, they are allowed. You can do that in an R1,
Right.
so.
That's only if it's a relative, right? You can't use it as a rent.
no
Currently,
caregiver
currently it must be a relative occupying that ADU
Or caregiver.
or a caregiver, right?
So question, someplace in the code, it says that the maximum percentage that dwelling units can be on a lot is 40%. And so how does this accessory dwelling unit fit that 40% rule? If my primary and accessory dwelling unit do not exceed 40%, then I'm good to go. Am I interpreting that correctly?
Yes.
That's all.
Yeah, and the lot that I was referring to, I believe they meet those requirements.
So then the second question then, if we changed and said, you know, the minimum square footage of a house was 500 or 650 or whatever it is, and I had a 7,000 square foot, 7,200 square foot lot, which is the minimum lot allowed currently on Ocean Shores, then the combined structures could not exceed 40% of the lot. Did I say that correctly?
Yes.
And they still have to pay the setbacks. I don't see anything wrong with that. I said before, I'm all in favor of what allows us to build smaller and more affordable units, whether they are single structure, small units, or whether they are dwelling units under one dwelling structure roof. Whatever allows us to make more affordable houses, we desperately need more affordable houses.
I was just gonna say, I foresee an influx of 650 2-story above the garage homes, and I think that'd be a great thing for right here.
I agree. And so however we need to structure the code, and I trust Pat's how to come up, because I can only juggle so many facts and my disk drive doesn't spin very fast anymore.
Well, I make it way more simple than I just.
Go ahead. The question I have for the group is, do we want to take the temperature of the mayor before we do something?
Yes.
Because this will be, I don't want to send it in. Maybe until we have a discussion with the mayor. I have a discussion with the mayor first. This may be something that he considers he doesn't want to get into right now.
Yeah, because this could,
Well, this can be, anything we do to this is gonna be of interest, and rightfully so, to long-term residents of this community.
and
Who have been
we may
living
not
with
wanna
this
deal with this
And
right
see
now.
this as sort of protecting their view of what they want Ocean Shores to be and how it's always been. They're gonna perceive this as a change. So I would like to take the temperature of the mayor before we send this off in any official capacity. Do we have a thumbs up on that?
Yep.
I just don't want to throw this on him as an official communication of the planning commission.
So we just, between now and the next meeting, can talk to them and we'll add it to that agenda.
Yeah, it'll be on the same item with the agenda next week.
Perfect.
And then if it's not on the agenda, you know why.
Okay.
Go ahead, Thor.
We should maybe give them some, supply some additional reasons for this proposed change, such as if you reduce the footprint of the house, you don't have to cut all the darn trees and brush down.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got it.
Plus, we get view corridors, which we don't now have, unless you consider 10 feet view corridor between homes. There's a lot of good reasons to do this.
Absolutely.
And then the third thing is that I think we should consider allowing detached dwellings on a multifamily lot as well.
Say that again.
Detached dwellings, duplexes, it could be two buildings instead of just one,
On,
on duplex, triplex, so on.
we do now, right?
On a multifamily.
Yeah.
There, no,
No, we
for
don't.
the purpose of subdivision, there has to be a common wall structure involved.
Right.
According to code.
Right now, if we do detached dwellings, let's say 2 or 3 units on a duplex or triplex home, we can't now do that. But we could suggest a change to doing that because we have it either apartment or detached. dwellings.
Well, actually, you can do it now. But you can't sell them separately.
Right. Yeah.
So you could, if you own an R5, you could build 5 of these things that are detached. But you could live in one and rent 4 or rent all 5.
But so you
But they
cannot,
have, and currently they have to meet
Currently,
the
they have to
minimum
do that.
standards of this table.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that makes it impossible.
makes it difficult.
And I keep saying this, pounding the same drum, that I think that being able to build those 5 individual structures, those 5 separate structures, paves a better path towards affordable housing. So I'm all in favor of allowing whatever change we need to make to the code to allow independent, small.
so you're basically allowing subdivision without a common wall.
Yeah.
That's the easiest way to
Yeah,
describe that.
I mean-
Did I get that right before we go on here?
But R1's excluded.
What?
R1.
I was always excluded. I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah,
R2 and above, allowing subdivision without a common wall structure.
yes, that's the concept that was just laid out. And I guess the only thing that I don't have clear in my head is to make sure that we still apply the same minimum square footage for a subdivision, even if you're using detached structures as opposed to a common wall structure.
So, yeah, before we go, so I think what you're getting at, because I'll get you next, Eleanor, is the reason they're doing the common walls is because they can do the 650, put it down the middle, and get 325 per,
Per,
and then subdivide.
right, but
That's
the lot
why it's
size,
being
so
done.
that subdivided lot has a minimum square footage of like 1,200 feet or 1,600 square feet or something. It's less than the minimum identified in R1 as
7,000.
7,200 square feet. So we just need to make sure that we apply that lot size to that concept in the multi-zones, the duplex and above, so that we can still subdivide to those lot sizes, not using a common wall structure, but the detached structures.
Okay. On the other hand, you would minimize the units themselves.
You like those condos, don't you?
But it's a simpler solution. Than going to public hearing to do every one of these.
Go ahead, Eleanor, if you had.
If we eliminate the need for a common wall, wouldn't we then have setbacks that create less usage of the land? Because if you have 3 buildings that have a common wall, they don't take up as much space on a lot as 3 buildings that don't have common walls.
That's correct, and you would still have to apply the setbacks that you would, like on the double twin homes. There's a 5-foot setback on
On
either
each
side of that
one,
property
yeah.
line. that
So
protects it.
that's gonna use up a lot more space on the lot and leave less room for building.
It's, yeah, so that's the concept of more open space. You might not get as many structures on the lot, but you'll have more open space and the appeal of living in a detached structure as opposed to an apartment or a duplex.
But that's not gonna help affordable housing.
Oh, yeah.
That would increase-
Yeah,
Yeah, it will.
it still will, because you're putting multiple structures on a parcel with a provision to subdivide.
Yes, that, yeah, before we go, I think what they're saying is that what you may, instead of having two twin homes, basically 4 dwelling units, you may be able to fit 2 or 3.
I understand that
Structures.
completely. That was my question. Wouldn't it allow itself to more affordable housing if you could put 4 houses on a lot with a common wall rather than 3? I mean, it seems to me like that would create more affordable housing.
Can I interject on that? It would create more affordable housing, however, it's not affordable desired housing. People want to be in their own structure, they don't want common walls. So in my mind, if we can say the minimum square footage is 650 square feet, and we can do the subdivision without having common wall, that'll allow us to put in like 4. So I've got a lot on, or had a lot on Mariner Court, no, Marine View Drive, that's zoned R9. It's 80 some feet wide. So 650 square feet, you could put a whole bunch of these little houses. You could go 4 or 5 of them and fit them in there and have separation.
And you could subdivide if you're allowed to
Well,
subdivide.
not under current.
But under, change the code to allow to subdivide acreage.
Correct.
Go ahead, Russ.
I just had a thought that I wanted to share. So Thorne, you said something about this minimum square footage deal coming from like the 60s when Ocean Shores was first incorporated. And I wonder if some of that had, it just dawned on me. I wonder, you know, and I'm probably I'm definitely the youngest person on the council, but so I don't remember this, but wasn't this area pretty much dominated by the timber industry at that point, and they would have, you know, they would want bigger homes built?
These are read by people in Seattle. They were read by the local people at all.
So I think,
I do have a question regarding setbacks on subdivided lots. Would the 5-foot setback apply to each side of the line?
Yes.
so the building has to be 10 feet apart.
10
Yeah.
feet between the structures.
Now, the other way to avoid that, if you want to, is you don't subdivide the lot, because you can get by using a fire code for separation then. And if somebody, again, chooses to condominiumize, they can minimize those 10 foots down to 8 feet, or I don't know what the code is, 5 feet or something, 5-hour wall, I don't know. Anyway, it does allow you to have more structures within the code on that lot.
But you can't subdivide.
Right, and
You
that,
can do it
and,
away, yeah, it's something the developers
yeah,
can do.
and they're not as desirable from what Pat says.
So I mean, I think I've got enough to talk to the mayor about.
Okay, I can do
And it's a
that.
question of how much he's willing to bite on this.
Yeah.
What he thinks the temperature
It's
is. up
just a
there.
path forward that's fairly simple and logical that gets us to affordable housing.
Exactly.
So just a question on your procedure. Does it make sense that when you email the mayor, like you're gonna do now, that you BCC all of us? so that-
This will be an in-person meeting.
Oh, okay.
There'll be nothing,
Good.
Okay.
this will.
But again,
I just want to hear his verbal guidance on, I want to talk to him about the options we've talked about and see how much he would like us to explore each avenue. And come up with a recommendation. We've really talked about 2 or 3 things here. All the way from eliminating the square footages, making it 650 everywhere, and I'm gonna have to sit down and educate him what paragraph E means, and I can do that very simply. And then beyond that, most of that what we're talking about is really our R1 impacts mostly. Then talk to him a little bit about some of the multifamily, which may be requiring him to sit down with Marshall to explain it after the fact. Because I think the single family I can easily explain and get that done. I think the multifamily, common wall subdivision, pros and cons and all of that may require a meeting with Marshall and the mayor to get it better. You agree, Marshall?
Yeah,
I don't think, he's not in this business, so he doesn't understand it like we do.
Yeah, it wouldn't take much of a conversation to bring him up to speed, though. He would get the concept.
He's gonna need it anyways.
Yeah.
So, all right, so I'm happy with that. So we have another one on the agenda. The question is, are we too tired?
I would rather see, I think this is gonna be a big discussion, and I'd rather we move it to the next time.
I think, yeah, I think we have a motion to move the pyramid.
Before we vote on that.
Yeah.
That Gary sent out an email that I generated.
Yeah.
And that document, the top of that document included a table.
Yeah.
And I don't know if everybody brought that table
Yeah.
with you or not. And so I'm okay with moving this discussion. It's, my bet is a pyramid zoning discussion is gonna take 2 or 3.
It is, and I think-
Big
I
discussion.
think this,
But what I invite everybody to do is look at that table, and let me explain very quick. When I created that table, what I did in the commercial zones is I put down all of the permitted uses, and I put them on the same line. And so, for example, grocery and drugstores are permitted in all 3 zones. And if you look across that table, they're all on the same line. But if we get down to equipment rental, it's only allowed in B2. B3, B3 in many ways reflects B1 because our current B3 code says that we encourage you to have specialty shops and gift shops and grocery stores and yada, yada, yada. And that says in the, if you look at the code under chapter 17, it explains what all of those things are. So just my approach when we get down into the nuts and bolts of pyramid zoning is which of these duplicated permitted uses should be retained and which should be exclusive to a B1 or a B2.
I have one comment. If you look at the zoning map, there isn't any B2, B3 on it.
That's one of the things I want to bring up. There is no B3 on the zoning map. And if you look at the land use map, my best guess, because it's not defined in the comp plan, my best guess is that I have to look at what it says again, is that B3 is intended to replace resort tourists. And currently, if you look at the zoning map, resort tourists, the only thing on the zoning map that makes sense to me is resort tourists is this area down by the jetty. But do we want to change that to resort tourists? Or do we want to identify that as B3? So I'm starting to get deeper into the pyramid that I want to get, but let me just make the point. A thing that's really, really critical to understand is any place that is zoned for a hotel motel is also zoned for homeless shelters and is also zoned for transient rentals. And so one of the things that I did, and I'll pass it out now, or I can bring it back at the next meeting, I printed out the purpose and the permitted and conditional uses for each of the 3 commercial zones. And I also printed out the ordinance for the transient rentals, because transit rentals have a big impact on how we are going to decide or figure out pyramid zoning. And so I want to have everybody think about that and come back at the next
so
meeting.
if you would send that to me in electronic form, I can get into the packet. So the public can see that.
I'll do that.
That way it can be sort of the record for the next meeting.
And
If you
I'm
would
happy
send
to do
me,
that.
it would be good.
Yeah, yeah.
And as long as I've got them printed rather than.
I'll take a copy on the way out.
Paper and ink. I'll give everybody a copy now.
But I'd like to also get them in the record as part of the document. So the only thing I'm gonna say on this B1, B2, and I've got a question for Marshall afterwards is the real goals are, let's clean up the business district where we can. So after lots of discussion with lots of interested parties and Thorne's wonderful entire tribe on this, I think that horse has left the barn. There's not a lot left to do because we've got extremely multi-use activities occurring right now. It's almost uncontrollable. So we need to figure out how best to deal with what we got left, right?
We've only got 16 lots left. You can spend all week on that, I don't think so.
John Williams, are you still there?
And I was surprised to find so few when I went down and looked down.
Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, go ahead.
I'd like to address what John brought up because we have addressed this in the past. The reason for the problem in that area was pyramid zoning. If you go out there, for all practical purposes, it looks like R1. But it's actually multifamily. And that's the fault of pyramid zoning. So, I think having areas for multifamily is critical to this community. But once we've allowed it to become 2/3 treated as R1, I think he makes a good point that some areas we may want to reevaluate. And I think that could be left to the discussion next time. I just wanted to address it because John took the time to bring it up.
And in the back of my mind, I've been thinking this is a task not from us, but somebody to really figure out where what has occurred has overcome the zoning. And is it almost time to go back and look at redoing some discussions of zoning and looking for other areas to do that? I don't know.
think it is, but this next
Another
time.
discussion, go ahead.
So I hear what Eleanor is saying, and I hear what Don Williams said, and I disagree with both of them. And I'll use a metaphor. So I buy a house at the end of the runway because it's cheap. And now 40 other people buy houses at the end of the runway, and now shut the airport down because we've got houses down there. That does not make any sense. If I bought a property in a commercial zone intending to put up a single family dwelling, it's a commercial zone. And if I demand that it be used as a commercial zone, that's well within our purview. If I buy a property that's in zone R9 or R6 or R3 or whatever it is, and it has been inundated with R1 dwellings, that did not change the zoning. And we have a very finite, a very limited amount of multi-family lots left. And my personal opinion is that it is to the city's long-range benefit to demand that those multi-family dwelling lots be used for multi-family dwellings. And I took that risk when I bought my house intending to build a single family in a multi-family zone. That's my position, but I'm a firm believer in the majority consensus, and I'm willing to go with that. But that's my reasoning.
Well, I have some discussion that I'd like to have on that, but quite frankly, I think it's for another day.
It is right.
Right.
It's a long time. My brain is fried.
And I respect that and agree with it. I just wanted to bring that up because I wanted to address Ron's question, not comment. I disagree with Don.
All right. So I am brain. How did you do this? This is like hard to finish it. So the secretary for the next meeting, sitting to my left, the lucky man. Do we have any reports from the planning commission? None heard. Next meeting is August 23rd, 2022, 2 p.m. at this location. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Oh, we do, right here.
Second.
What, before we adjourn?
I got a request from our hearing examiner and the discussion almost crossed the table here for, and this is something that you may want to request input from the mayor, but the concept of requiring a conditional use hearing for the Commonwealth subdivisions, which we talked about briefly. In the hearing examiner's eyes, there's no way to legitimately deny one of those. And so he's wondering why we still require a conditional use permit for that activity. Recognizing that you have to assume a bias against a tenant or a homeowner in order to rule one way or the other. His opinion, I believe, is that we should consider taking the Commonwealth subdivisions out of the realm of requiring a conditional use hearing to approve those permits.
Are there any other conditional uses that don't require a hearing?
What it would mean is make it a permitted use.
Okay. So that's something to bring up as we
It's something that we
continue.
need to floor as a subject
But
of
that's,
discussion.
Before, and I know we have a motion, let's talk about this afterwards, we bring it up the next. meeting.
Okay.
So we have a motion, we have a second, all in favor?
Who did what?
Fine.
I,